My former radio colleague and beloved pastor and speaker, Morris Venden, tells a marvelous story about a little girl, maybe 3 years old, who came bursting into her daddy's office. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, I've learned how to write." Now, Daddy knew full well that she couldn't write worth a lick, and she hadn't even graduated from the sandbox to Sesame Street yet. But there in her hand, she held a little piece of paper covered with all kinds of scribbles and blotches, and she held it up to him. "See?" Well, he did what most dads do. He began to gush over it. "Wow, sure enough, you did learn to know how to write. You go, girl," or whatever dads say in that neighborhood. "Good job, honey. That's really great. It's good writing." Well, she soaked in his praise for a minute, still grinning from ear to ear, and all of a sudden she sliced right through his false front with this. "What's it say, Daddy? What's it say?" And the poor guy turned hot and cold all over. What's it say? Well, it didn't say anything, but he couldn't tell her that. And she was looking up at her wonderful daddy, this icon of truthfulness and hope. "What's it say, Daddy?" And as Venden tells the story, God must have given this dad wisdom from heaven, because he scooped up his daughter up in his lap and he told her, "Well, sweetie, it says here that you're a little girl and you're trying to learn how to write and you're just getting started. But one of these days you're going to be able to write real well, poems, and stories, and books, and everything." And he gave her a big squeeze. "That's what it says." And the kid can't believe it. "It does?" Yes. It's a sweet story, isn't it? And Venden helps us to see ourselves in the picture, where we do some little good deeds, some little smidgen of obedience, and we're so happy and we go rushing to God. "Hey, God, look it, I've learned how to obey." And God sees those tiny little efforts of ours, those oh-so-human endeavors where our so-called goodness just barely measures a blip on His screen, where we cast the smallest shadow beneath the glory of His eternal 10 Commandments. But in kindness, God looks down and says to us, "Yes, my child, you are trying to obey. Your heart is right. You're doing your best. And one of these days, if you stay in friendship with me, I'm going to help you to know and experience the real thing." Well, how does this connect up with music wars, where people who like Onward Christian Soldiers and people who like audio adrenaline look across the great divide at each other, and some of them actually pick up swords and spears, spiritual ones at least? The fundamental question that every single believer has to answer, of course, is this one. It's not hugely important what we think of our music. After all, we human beings have been notoriously twisted in our taste, haven't we? We've proved that with our TV guides, our diets, our vocabularies, and the whole 9 yards. If we like our music a certain way in church, that wouldn't really prove anything at all. But the question, you see, is this: what does God think of our music, whether it's by Fanny Crosby or Phillips, Craig, and Dean? Now, I'd like to put off just a little bit longer any discussion about the morality of my favorite music or of your favorite music. But is it even good? Is it grand and glorious to God? Impressive? Well performed? Certainly all of us have run into the buzzsaw of badly done music at church. My church. Kids get up there with their plug-in guitars and their microphones, all of the cables and the feedback, and the one singer that's way louder than the rest, and the drummer who can't keep time. And an old man like me sits in the back row, 75 years old and getting older by the second as that bass guitar's thumps go right through my spleen. And you know, the music is just plain bad. I know it's bad. Everyone knows it's bad. Surely God must know it's bad. And on the other side, I'm sure there are little country Baptist churches and Methodist churches, and I can testify that I've been in enough Adventist churches where even the traditional music was just not very well done. The organ was reedy, out of tune, too loud. too soft, too broken, which meant we sang a cappella that Sabbath. The choir leader didn't show up. The PA didn't work. Everyone in the alto section was consistently off key. It reminds us of that church bulletin where the sermon title was announced, "What and Where is Hell?" And right below it said, "Come and listen to our choir practice." Well, let me stop being so negative. Let's go to some of the finest church choirs in the country. Let's go to Willow Creek Community Church. Let's go to Saddleback, First Baptist in Dallas. Let's go to Loma Linda University Seventh-day Adventist Church or to Westminster Abbey. Put on the stage one of the top-notch Christian praise bands or the finest classical organist or the unforgettable choir from Azusa Pacific University. Now that is good stuff. God would surely be impressed by that, wouldn't he? But we're forgetting what God has up in heaven, aren't we? We're forgetting the angel choirs made up of millions of angels and how they've had thousands of years to compose and rehearse. There's never a false note in heaven. Angels never missed rehearsal. Angels never come up to practice with a grudge or some sort of a little piece of temper or pique which sours the face and flattens the notes. That never happens. And of course, we can't imagine the instruments up there. Sounds and chords and progressions and musical motifs that have never even crossed the minds of this off-tune little planet. We're just not up to it. Listen, they hear symphonies by the sea of glass that have never entered into the hearts of man. The Bible says so in 1 Corinthians 2. They sing a new song. The book of Revelation says that. Up there, it's music, 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 24 hours a day, the likes of which words cannot describe and our greatest composers cannot even closely duplicate. Then, on a very regular basis, God leans over the railing and he listens to the feeble plink, plink, plink we offer him from down here. Guitars and drums, pipe organs and choirs, high and low, rock and non-rock. But to the trained ears of heaven, it's pretty much plink, plink, plink. And yet, friend, I believe this with all my heart. God is pleased by the music that we offer up to worship in him. Not because it's so good. Obviously, he has better channels he can tune into up there. But because it's being offered from hearts that worship and adore and love. As C.S. Lewis, who admittedly hated all Christian music, makes his own confession, and as he analyzes the worth of our songs, our anthems or hymns, our choruses, he makes this observation. All our offerings, whether of music or martyrdom, are like the intrinsically worthless present of a child, which a father values indeed, but values only for the intention. If you're a dad, you know all about this. Your 2-year-old brings you a present for your birthday, and it is just nothing. Some ceramic blob, or a picture he colored, or a jar with centipedes from the backyard, or a grungy little toy he got for you from Pick and Save using your money. Here, Daddy. And like the father in our opening story, you oh and ah, and you hug and you praise, not because the present is wonderful, but because the heart is wonderful. You find beauty in the gift because the spirit of the giver is right. There's a story about scribbles and off-key music found in the book of Genesis, chapter 4. Actually, this Cain and Abel anecdote has to do with offerings brought to God. Abel, the younger son, brought God a lamb from his flock, while Cain, with whatever motivation in mind, brought God some of the fruits of his garden. Now, did God need the fruit or the lamb? No, he wasn't hungry, And he already had all the lamb and the cattle on 1,000 hills. God never needs the things we offer up to him, whether they're offerings, lambs, or organ preludes. His own storehouses are already full. What's important is the heart we bring along with the gift. And the NIV text notes here in Genesis 4 that for some reason Cain had come to worship with a bad motivation and a bad attitude. Some scholars conjecture that God had already explained to Earth's first family the importance of the lamb, pointing forward to the true Lamb of God, coming later for their redemption. Over in Hebrews 11, we discover that Abel's offering was better because it was given by faith. In any case, the lesson for us is clear. In our gifts of worship to God, our music, our songs, and our violins and our guitars, all trinkets and scribblings by heaven's standards, friend, it's the heart that counts. Is humility there? And worship? And faith? Are you bringing your loving Father your very best gift? If so, he's going to smile and enjoy it. Plink, plink, plink.